Hello everyone and welcome to my Y&R CBS Spoiler Today channel, where we dive into the most shocking twists and turns in generosity. Please hit the subscribe button right now and give this video a big thumbs up to show your support for the channel and to make sure you never miss a single moment of the drama. This is a moment that is going to change everything for the legendary Phyllis Summers as she faces an absolute nightmare scenario that she never saw coming. We're watching the master of manipulation get played at her own game, as an unlikely and generous alliance between Adam and Nick Newman starts to systematically tear her life apart. Phyllis has always been the hunter, but right now she's one being hunted, caught in a trap so intricate that every move she makes to escape only seems to tighten the noose. It is a story of betrayal, isolation, and a desperate high-stakes gamble as Phyllis realizes that her business, her money, and her very reputation are on the line, forcing her to abandon her usual playbook and embrace total chaos just to survive the night. Phyllis had always prided herself on being the smartest person in any room, the one who saw 10 steps ahead while everyone else struggled to keep up. But this time she hadn't seen it coming. I mean, can you even imagine the shock she felt? For a woman like Phyllis, who lives for the upper hand, finding out you were the one being played is a total gut punch. As the walls began to close in around her, she realized with a chilling certainty that she had not just underestimated Adam and Nick. She had walked straight into something far more calculated and far more dangerous than anything she had ever orchestrated herself. This wasn't just a little bit of payback for some past slight. This was a carefully constructed trap designed to dismantle her piece by piece, leaving nothing behind but the ruins of the empire she had fought so hard to build. It's honestly terrifying when you think about it. Adam and Nick together, that's a powerhouse of destruction. It began so subtly that she almost dismissed it at first. She noticed a missed call here, a strange look there, and those awkward conversations that stopped the moment she entered the room. We have all been there, right? That sinking feeling when you walk in and know everyone was just talking about you. She saw alliances shifting without any clear explanation, and yet she knew there was a pattern. There had to be a pattern because chaos was never truly random in her world. Not when powerful and ruthless men like Adam and Nick were involved. As she retraced her steps, replaying every recent interaction in her mind like a movie, she could feel the ground beneath her, confidence beginning to crack. The truth was becoming impossible to ignore. They were working together, two men who had spent years at odds, two brothers who usually can't stand to be in the same zip code, were suddenly united with a singular purpose, and that purpose it was her total downfall. The realization hit her like a physical blow, stealing the breath from her lungs as she tried to understand how it had come to this. How had she gone from being the one in control to being the target? She was the hunted instead of the hunter, and that is a position Phyllis Summers is simply not used to being in. Yet even as panic threatened to take hold, Phyllis refused to surrender to it. Honestly, you have to admire her grit, because her fear was a weakness she could not afford. Not now, and certainly not when everything she owned was at stake. So, she did what she always did. She fought back with everything she had. She started digging, pushing into places she knew she wasn't welcome, and asking the kind of questions that no one in generosity wanted to answer. She started pulling at threads that began to unravel a much larger, much darker plan. One that had been set in motion long before she even suspected there was a problem. The deeper she went, the more isolated she became. Can you believe she had to go through this alone? People who once stood by her side were suddenly hesitant, distant, and completely unwilling to meet her gaze. It was as if they knew something she didn't, as if they were already bracing for the fallout of her destruction. That isolation was perhaps the most terrifying part of all, because Phyllis had always thrived on connections and on her ability to manipulate a web of relationships. But now that web was collapsing, strand by strand, leaving her exposed in a way she had never experienced before. Still, she pressed on. Stopping wasn't an option when her entire world was teetering on the edge of total destruction. It was only when she finally uncovered the truth, when she saw the full scope of Adam and Nick's plan laid bare before her that the magnitude of her situation truly sank in. This wasn't just about talking her down, this was about erasing her. They were dismantling every aspect of her life until there was nothing left to salvage. Her business deals were compromised, her financial stability was threatened, and her reputation was being shredded by carefully planted lies and undeniable evidence. I mean, they really went for the jugular here. All of it was orchestrated with a precision that left no room for escape, no loophole she could exploit, and no weakness she could turn to her advantage. For the first time in a very long time, Phyllis felt something dangerously close to helplessness. It's such a foreign and unwelcome sensation for her that she almost rejected it outright. But the evidence was undeniable. The trap was real, and it was closing in so fast. Yet, even in that moment of crushing realization, a spark of defiance ignited within her. If there was one thing Phyllis refused to be, it was defeated. She had been knocked down before and she had lost everything before, and each time she had clawed her way back stronger and smarter than ever. This would be no different. It couldn't be, because the alternative was just unthinkable. So she began to shift her perspective, looking at the trap not as an end, but as a challenge and a puzzle that needed solving. Slowly and methodically, she started to identify the cracks, those tiny imperfections in Adam and Nick's seemingly flawless plan. No matter how brilliant they thought they were, no plan was perfect. Were always variables and elements that couldn't be controlled. If she could find those, if she could just exploit them, then maybe, just maybe, she could turn the tables on them. But time was not on her side. The pressure was mounting and the consequences were growing more severe with each passing second. As the final pieces of the trap began to fall into place and the net tightened around her with suffocating inevitability, Phyllis found herself standing at a crossroads. She was forced to make a choice that would determine not just her future, but her very survival in that moment. As everything she had built threatened to crumble into dust, she made a decision that would either save her or destroy her completely. If Adam and Nick thought they had seen the last of her, or if they believed they could corner her and watch her fall without a fight, then they had made a fatal mistake. Phyllis was not someone who went down quietly. She was not someone who accepted defeat. As the storm closed in and her world collapsed in spectacular fashion, she prepared herself for the battle of her life. She knew that the only way out of the trap was to face it head on, to outthink, outmaneuver, and ultimately outlast the very man who believed they had already won. Whether she emerged victorious or not, one thing was certain. This was a war that would leave nothing unchanged, and Phyllis was ready to risk it all. Phyllis stood perfectly still for a long time after the realization settled into her bones. It was the kind of stillness that wasn't calm but coiled, like a storm gathering strength beneath the surface. Now that she understood the scale of what Adam and Nick had done, there was no going back to ignorance. There was no pretending. She still had the upper hand. Yet, in a strange way, clarity gave her power. If this was war, and it clearly was, then at least she finally knew who her enemies were and what they wanted. That meant she could start fighting with purpose instead of instinct alone. Phyllis was at her most dangerous when she was focused, when every move she made was deliberate and every word she spoke was calculated to provoke a reaction or to expose a weakness. Instead of panicking or running, she leaned in, forcing herself to revisit every detail of the trap with ruthless precision. She examined not just what Adam and Nick had done, but why they had done it that way. Motivation was the key to prediction, and prediction was the key to survival. As she constructed their strategy, she began to see something she hadn't noticed before. Not a flaw exactly, but a dependency. There was a critical point in their plan that relied on timing, coordination, and above all, trust between two men who had never truly trusted each other in their lives. That was where the first crack began to form in her mind. No matter how united Adam and Nick appeared on the surface, their history was too volatile and filled with too much betrayal and resentment for that alliance to be completely stable. This meant there was a chance, however small, that she could drive a wedge between them and turn their greatest strength into their greatest vulnerability. But doing that would require precision and the willingness to take risks that even Phyllis might have once considered too dangerous. Yet she didn't hesitate. Hesitation was a luxury she could no longer afford. She started laying the groundwork, reaching out to contacts and planting subtle suggestions to reintroduce old doubts. She knew that trust, once fractured, rarely healed cleanly. All she needed was a single moment of uncertainty that would make one of them question the other. Phyllis was acutely aware that she was walking a razor's edge. If Adam and Nick realized what she was doing and anticipated her counterattack, then whatever remained of her position would be obliterated without mercy. Yet the alternative, doing nothing and waiting for the trap to close, was far worse. So she pushed forward, embracing the danger and letting it sharpen her instincts. For a brief moment, she almost felt like her old self again. The strategist, the survivor, the woman who could turn impossible situations into opportunities. But that feeling was fragile, constantly threatened by the reality of her situation. The consequences of failure had never been this severe, not just professionally but personally. This wasn't just about business or power anymore. It was about her identity and her place in a world that suddenly seemed determined to erase her. That thought fueled her resolve even further. Phyllis refused to be erased or to become a cautionary tale whispered in the halls of power. She doubled down, pushing her plan into motion faster and more aggressively, taking calculated risks that sent ripples through the narrative Adam and Nick had built. At first, the changes were subtle. There was a delayed response here and a miscommunication there, but Phyllis noticed. She always noticed with each small disruption, her confidence grew. It meant she was getting through, and her interference was having an effect. That effect was all she needed to build momentum and create a cassette that would eventually bring the entire structure crashing down. But just as she began to believe that she might actually pull this off, something unexpected happened that sent a chill down her spine. Instead of reacting with suspicion, Adam and Nick adjusted seamlessly, almost as if they had anticipated her moves from the very beginning. That realization was more terrifying than anything else. It meant the trap wasn't just reactive, it was adaptive, designed to evolve in response to her resistance. Every move she made was being monitored, analyzed, and countered in real time. Suddenly, the cracks she thought she had found began to look less like weaknesses and more like bait, carefully placed to draw her in and give her just enough hope to keep fighting and keep exposing herself. For a moment, Phyllis felt the ground drop out from beneath her again. If she had been playing exactly the role they expected her to play, then she wasn't dismantling the trap. She was tightening it herself. The weight of that possibility pressed down on her with suffocating force, threatening to break her composure and drag her into a spiral of doubt and fear. But Phyllis forced herself to stop, to breathe, and to think. Panic would only make things worse. Deep down, beneath the fear and the uncertainty, there was still that core of steel that had carried her through every crisis she had ever faced. It refused to let her give up now, so she did the one thing she hadn't done yet. The one thing she had been avoiding because it required her to step completely outside her comfort zone. She changed the rules, she abandoned the strategies she had relied on and let go of the need to outthink Adam and Nick on their terms. Instead, she embraced unpredictability and chaos. The very thing she had always controlled so carefully. If their plan depended on anticipating her moves, then the only way to break it was to become impossible to predict. It was a dangerous gamble that could just as easily accelerate her downfall as prevent it. But at this point, Phyllis knew there were no safe options left. As she stepped into that uncertainty and prepared to make her next move without a clear outcome or a guarantee of success, she felt something shift inside her. It was a transformation born not of confidence, but of necessity. When everything is taken from you and every advantage is stripped away, what remains is something raw and unrefined. That was what Phyllis was becoming in that moment. Something Adam and Nick might not be able to control or contain. Whether that would be enough to save her or not remained to be seen. But one thing was certain: the game they had started was no longer the game she was playing. And that alone might be the age she needed to survive. And this is where everything shifts. Phyllis isn't just fighting Adam and Nick anymore. She's fighting the version of herself that always needed control, and letting go of that might be the most dangerous move she's ever made. Because here's the truth: when someone like Phyllis embraces chaos instead of controlling it, she becomes unpredictable, and unpredictability is something even the best plans can survive. But at the same time, that kind of gamble doesn't come without a cost, and I can't help but feel like she's about to cross a line she can never uncross. In my opinion, this isn't just a comeback story anymore. This is a transformation, and those kinds of transformation usually leave scars that never fully heal. So now the real question is, will Phyllis break the trap, or will she break herself trying to escape it? And even more importantly, if she does win, what version of Phyllis will be left standing in the end? Because something tells me Adam and Nick may have started this war, but they're not fully prepared for what they have unleashed. Looking ahead, I wouldn't be surprised if this turns into a much bigger fallout, where alliances shatter, secrets explode, and someone completely unexpected pays the price. And just when it feels like Phyllis might be one step ahead again, what if that's exactly where they want her? So stay close, because the next move won't just change the game, it might rewrite the entire story. Thank you so much for watching this breakdown on Y&R CBS spoiler today. What do you think about Phyllis' wild decision to embrace chaos? Do you think Adam and Nick actually have her exactly where they want her? Or is Phyllis about to pull off the ultimate escape? Let me know your theories in the comments down below. And don't forget to like and subscribe for more daily soap updates.